We are going to start tonight with some breaking news. Prime Minister Mark Carney is losing a cabinet minister over today's energy agreement with Alberta. Steven Guilbeault, currently serving as the Minister of Canadian Identity, but formerly known as the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, and a longtime climate activist before he ran for office, is leaving cabinet but staying on, he says, as a Liberal MP. He says this is in connection to the federal government's Memorandum of Understanding with Alberta signed today. Steven Guilbeault just released, in fact, a lengthy statement posted to social media. We're just getting it into our inboxes, so I'm going to parse apart some of it for you. This afternoon, he writes, "It is with great sadness that I submitted my resignation to the Prime Minister as Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture and Minister responsible for official languages, Minister of Nature and Parks Canada, as well as his lieutenant in Quebec. Despite the difficult economic context, I remain one of those," Steven Guilbeault writes, "for whom environmental issues must remain front and center. That is why I strongly oppose the Memorandum of Understanding between the federal government and the government of Alberta." So what exactly is Steven Guilbeault taking a stand, in his words, against? Here's the breakdown. Alberta signs on to this MOU to negotiate an increase to the industrial price on carbon by April of next year and commits to reduce methane emissions by 75% over the next 10 years. The federal government, in turn, agrees to suspend clean electricity regulations, not implement the oil and gas emissions cap, and to the possibility of an exemption for a pipeline under the federal tanker ban, all in pursuit, potentially, of a new oil pipeline to the Pacific, should there be a private proponent. We are joined live now to talk more about that by Tim Hodgson. He's the Federal Minister for Energy and Natural Resources. Minister, a pleasure to see you. Thank you very much for making the time. I actually can't hear you, and I apologize. It just, I can see your mouth moving, but oh, there you, now I have you. Thank you very much. My apologies for the technical difficulties. I have a number of questions about the substance of the MOU, but I do have to start off on the resignation of your cabinet colleague, your now former cabinet colleague, Minister Guilbeault. Did it take you by surprise?
Look, Minister Guilbeault is a friend. I respect him greatly. He's been a very valued member of cabinet. I understand he's going to continue to be a valued member of caucus. And I think that's good for Canada.
He is going to remain in caucus, but his statement is very, very specific in its criticism of the MOU just signed. In fact, he concludes it essentially by saying that the MOU, in conjunction with all the climate policies that have been walked back, are essentially why he arrived at this decision. Your portfolio is obviously overseeing energy and natural resources. Did it put you at odds with Minister Guilbeault, given the interest that he lays out here?
No, I don't think so. Look, I think the Prime Minister has been very clear. We're at a hinge moment. We have an economic rupture in the world, given what America is doing. Nostalgia, as the Prime Minister says, is not a strategy. We need to respond to that. We need a secure and economically sovereign country. That means responsibly developing our energy and natural resources. That means diversifying our economy and building new trading relationships with people other than the United States. And we need to do that in partnership with partner provinces, territories, and Indigenous peoples. We share those goals. Those are the same goals that Alberta has. What the MOU does is lay out how we do that with Alberta.
How do you expect, though, Minister, Canadians to accept the premise that you just put forward if you can't even have all of Cabinet on the same page?
So I think this is a win from an environmental perspective. We get, as part of this agreement, we get agreement on an industrial carbon price. We all know that is the most effective way to get to net zero. This was not working well in Alberta before this agreement. We now have a path for that to be working well. We get agreement on the building of the Pathways project, the largest single carbon capture, utilization, and storage facility in the world, the biggest project in the world. We will be the first country in the world to step change the carbon intensity of our oil and gas industry, dramatically reducing it. It would take the equivalent of 4.75 million cars a year off the roads. That is a win. We get agreement on methane regs. Methane is 4 times more polluting than carbon dioxide. This is the most economically efficient way to drive towards net zero. We get cooperation on environmental assessments, where in the past we weren't working constructively with Alberta. If we get to a pipeline, we have agreement that we will use Canadian steel. That is a win for Canada. And we get agreement on closer interties between the grids across Canada, in particular between Alberta and British Columbia and Alberta and Saskatchewan. Those are all wins.
And I take your point on all of that. If though, in the aggregate, and your point off the bat about this being a win for climate were true, would Minister Guilbeault not still be in cabinet? And I'll use just one example. You brought up the industrial carbon price. I interviewed Premier Smith right after this announcement, and I asked her multiple times, literally over and over again, if a new pipeline isn't constructed, which is a possibility because there might not be a private proponent, do you still agree that the industrial price on carbon will increase? She would not unequivocally say yes, and I asked her over and over again, is this really the win on climate that you're saying it is?
So the Memorandum of Understanding lays out a path. It lays out a process for getting to those shared objectives, creating a more economically sovereign economy, about diversifying our trade away and building new trade partners in addition to the United States, and by doing it in partnership with provinces and territories. At the end of the MOU are a series of work items. They're all laid out there clearly with timelines. We have work to do. This is going to be a lot of work. This is going to, but that's what Canadians want. They don't want people to dream nostalgically about the past or pretend there's a magical solution. They want people who are willing to do the hard work and try and make our country more secure, stronger, working to grow our resources. That's what they want us to do. That's what the MOU lays out.
Are people, though, Minister, who care about the climate, particularly to the degree that Steven Guilbeault does, just nostalgic?
I believe we are at a time where the world is in a very difficult place. Our economy is in a difficult place. We need to do both. We need to grow our natural resources, and we need to do it in an environmentally responsible way. We need to do it in partnership with provinces and Indigenous peoples. The MOU lays out the path for doing that. It will be hard work. It would be nice if we didn't need to do that hard work, but we need to do that hard work. And Canadians expect us to do that. That's what this government's going to do.
Why wasn't more of the hard work done on the partnership front when it comes to BC in particular in advance of today's signing? Premier Eby, pardon me, has staked out a very clear position. He said he learned, for example, last week of the prospect of what could be in this MOU from reading about it in the paper. Why didn't your government do more to bring him and his government into the fold in order to ensure that the prospect for whatever you do want to see go ahead from an economic perspective actually happens? Was that a mistake?
So this government works with all of the provinces and territories. Our Prime Minister regularly talks with all of the premiers. I talk with all of my counterparts. I know our Minister of Environment does the same with her counterparts. I will be going to British Columbia tonight to meet with my counterparts and meet with the Premier tomorrow. What I can tell you is this agreement is very clear. We need to work together with British Columbia. It's part of the agreement. It calls for a trilateral table to advance things, and it is very clear that to do some of the things Alberta wants to do, it needs to work with British Columbia. That's something that Danielle Smith has said she wants to do, and she's committed to doing.
She also said very specifically today that the MOU contains nothing that would afford BC even an effective veto. I know there's not a constitutional one, but even something that amounts to an effective veto. Do you agree with that position?
What What it says is we will work together to do something that is in the benefit of both provinces. We are committed to doing that hard work. We're committed to sitting down with them. I'm not going to prejudge outcomes. I believe this is a country where all Canadians want their politicians, want their premiers to work together and try and get to a better place for Canada. We are in a hinge moment. We are in a time of economic rupture. Canadians expect their leaders to sit down and work together and work out these hard problems. And that's what we're committed to doing with every premier of every province and territory.
I'm not asking, though, based on a hypothetical. Premier Eby, on multiple instances, has been unequivocal about his position. This pipeline is a no-go. So I'm asking you if you agree with the Premier's assessment that ultimately that decision will be the federal government's and that there is no effective veto for BC.
So it is a hypothetical because there is no pipeline today. We don't have a route. The Premier Smith,
but you just wrote an entire MOU then on a potential pipeline.
Premier Smith has been very clear. She does not yet have a route. She has said that they are doing their work and they expect to come back to the federal government by next summer with a proposed route. Clearly, between now and then, if they're acting as a proponent, they will need to work with British Columbia, if it is a pipeline through British Columbia, and they will need to work with affected First Nations. That is part of the MOU. That is what Premier Smith has said she's prepared to do as a proponent. We applaud that, and we will be constructive in any discussions between Alberta, British Columbia, and affected First Nations.
I know your time's very limited. The screen just went black, so I just have a few seconds. Because you're saying if it's to the West Coast, but this MOU is very specific, that is the prospect that your government is looking at. It's not hypothetical.
Yes, you're correct. It says to a pipeline to get to Asian markets, but there is no route today.
Okay, well, when there is, I hope to have you back, and I'll ask you similar questions. Minister, a pleasure as always. Thank you for making the time.
I'll look forward to being back. Take care.
Thank you. Tim Hodgson is a Minister of Natural Resources and Energy for the federal government.